Madam Deputy Speaker. The government's universal credit policy is an utter shambles and a disgrace. Even if the original vision behind it was well-intentioned, it is forcing families into poverty, homelessness and destitution. And according to the Times, some households are going to be £200 worse off per week in transferring to UC. And half of lone parents and two-thirds of working-age couples with children who are likely to be £2,000, £2,400 worse off. Madam Deputy Speaker, the government has used universal credits as a vehicle for cuts. Instead of helping lift families out of poverty, it is increasing dependency on food banks, increasing homelessness, increasing indebtedness. The context of this policy is that already there are 4.5 million children living in poverty in this country. In the context of disability cuts being cut by some £5 billion, child benefit being cut by £2.8 billion, housing benefit cut by £2.3 billion, this policy is going to add to people's suffering. This is not about transferring people from worklessness and unemployment into employment. It's going to increase in-work poverty. The government talks about ending austerity, but the reality is that this policy is going to add to people's suffering, and the government rapidly needs to find the additional funding to make this policy achieve the objectives it was originally supposed to achieve, which was about creating the opportunity for people to make the transition into work and be able to lift themselves out of poverty. That is not what's happening. I'll give way to the honourable gentleman.
The honourable lady for giving way, and I agree with the point that she's making, that this needs to be adequately funded. Is she as surprised as I am, therefore, that the Labour Party did not support the extra £1.5 billion that was given for universal credit in the last budget?
Look, I think that he should be talking to the Chancellor to sort this policy out, because too often his government experiments on the British people without having a clue on what is happening in people's lives and dismisses the problems our constituents face. It happened with the National Health Service reform. Where is the former Health Secretary who introduced those policies and has devastated the Health Service? The same is happening with welfare reform. They will go off after meting out incredibly devastating, damaging policies to the population, just as they're doing with Brexit, and then they leave. This is not good enough. Take responsibility, sort this policy out. If it is a workable policy that improves people's lives, then he could consider support from other parties. But that is not where we are. People are being forced into poverty and destitution. That is the legacy of the former Secretary of State who introduced this policy. Frankly, he went on a discovery exercise when he was in opposition. He discovered poverty in the country. He decided to come into this House to introduce this policy. But the reality is this policy is going to make matters worse. So even those of us who gave him the benefit of the doubt when he introduced the so-called Centre for Social Justice find that actually his intentions were utterly disgraceful. He has presided over a policy. He has presided over a policy that is going to devastate millions of people's lives. And ministers ought to get a grip and make sure that those mistakes are not ones that end up causing more suffering in our country, because that is his legacy, and he should be here taking responsibility for what is happening in this country. In my constituency, over half the population, half the children live in poverty. It's gone up by 24% since. It's gone up significantly. Local government funding has gone down by 24% since this government came into power. And furthermore, families with more than 2 children are facing cuts to their benefits, even retrospectively, that is going to devastate the life chances of children following the two-child policy. So these policies that this government is introducing is combining the attempt to cut funding that is much needed with a policy that might have been well-intentioned, but combining those things is actually making a mess of a policy that might have commanded support across the House. The government needs to get a grip, sort the policy out, delay the rollout until it is absolutely watertight and protects people's lives rather than damage them.